Chapter 29, Debt Collector. As I sat in the chair, the gloomy silence surrounding me, I put my elbows onto the desk before me, dropped my head into my hands, and began to weep. It was as if a dam had broken within the deepest recesses of my soul, and a tidal wave of wickedness, carrying an infinite number of my evil deeds, began to flood into my consciousness. If you would have asked me earlier in my life, even days earlier, if I had ever acted, spoken, or even thought in ways that were wicked or evil, I would have readily admitted to this truth. But now something was happening in the depths of my being, something different. In the past, I'd always had a good excuse for why I did what I did. I had justified my evil deeds by trying to place the responsibility at the feet of someone else, be that my parents, society, or the circumstances that surrounded me. If there was ever sorrow for the evil I had committed, if I were really honest, it wasn't because I had committed a heinous, awful, an unlawful act, but because I had been caught. I hadn't really been sorry for my wickedness and the harm that it brought to others. I was only remorseful for the harmful consequences that came into my life as a result of my evil plans and the actions that followed. Now, as I looked into the face of my past, I was confronted with a horrendous, contorted, and vile-looking monster that oozed wickedness from every pore. As I approached the God who made me, my wickedness only became more abundantly clear. The more I gazed into the face of the one who made me, witnessing his selfless, loving, and sacrificial character, it only further contrasted the evil I saw residing, lurking, and trying to hide in my own heart. I not only wanted to be forgiven, I wanted to be free. I didn't merely want to receive pardon so that I could go out and continue my life of reckless abandon. I wanted to be forgiven. I wanted to be transformed, changed, and freed from being the person who lived life trying to keep myself seated on my own little throne, not caring who I hurt in doing so. It was becoming more and more clear that the throne I wanted for myself had a reservation notice on it already. Only God was worthy to sit on that throne. It was built for him and him alone. I began to cry up to God, pouring out my heart before him. It was the first time I'd ever really prayed, actually meaning the words that came out of my mouth. I knew I wasn't being allowed into the great Creator's presence because of any righteous, holy act that I had done, because I had none. The only reason I was here was because of God's overflowing love and mercy. His messenger in the clinic earlier that day had pointed me to the greatest evidence of his boundless mercy and abundant forgiving character. As I approached God's holy throne room in prayer, carrying only my wicked, evil, rebellious sins against him, a nagging doubt followed close behind me, whispering unbelief into my ear. When I asked God for mercy and pardon, how could I know if he would actually grant my plea for forgiveness? What if he instead decided to crush me into utter oblivion? These sparks of doubt did not get a chance to smolder and burst into flame. As soon as they landed above the surface of my thoughts, they were immediately extinguished by the story of Jesus given in his word. Why would God become a man if he only intended to crush me? Why would God live a perfect, sinless life as a man if he only planned on punishing rebels? And why would God subject himself to the torments and sufferings and eventually the death of a cruel Roman cross if he only planned on rejecting those for whom he had suffered and died? God would not turn me away. He made me to be in fellowship with himself. He came and died in my place so that I could have forgiveness of sins and eternal life. He proved to the world that his death on the cross was not for anything wrong that he had done. The empty tomb 3 days later proclaimed that truth in the loudest voice possible. If Jesus would have had any sin of his own, then his death would have been for his own violations, and the grave would have never released him from its vice-like grip. The very fact that Jesus rose from the grave seen by hundreds of eyewitnesses, proved that he suffered and died as an act of love for my sins, for my pardon, for my eternal life. Jesus promised that he would never turn away anyone who came to him in faith, and I was going to take the Son of God at his word. My doubts still nagged at me, but my faith was greater. I knew God loved me. I knew that he came to earth to save me, to die for me, to give me hope. God was offering me the great exchange, and I was going to receive it. I was going to offer him my sin-filled, broken down life, and he was going to give me forgiveness, full restoration, and eternal life. This was an offer I could not refuse. I poured out my heart to the Lord, believing that Jesus was my only hope in life and in death. Jesus paid my debt. He suffered so that I would never have to. He rose from the grave, showing me death had no hold on him, and that it would have no hold, no enduring hold on me either. God's promise to me was that all my sins had been forgiven because of Jesus. And God also promised me that I was now a new creature. I had been given a new heart, new desires, and his power to overcome evil in my own life, and also the power to say no to the wickedness that lurked in the world around me. God promised me that I had been set free. As I ascended the stairs from the basement, I felt great joy. I felt new. I felt clean. God had promised me a new life, an eternal life. Stepping out of my house, I began the first steps in the great adventure, unsure of exactly what this adventure would look like and where it would lead me.